Greetings, dear tribe members. This is the Sisters of Ra podcast. My name is Kaya.
And I am Nicole.
Today we would like to introduce ourselves and just give you a little bit of an idea of what we're going to be talking about on this podcast, how it's going to flow, who we are, what we do, and really just get a better idea as to what we are here to do as you are on this mission that we call Earth. We are all here on a mission, and we hope to inspire you, to guide you, to reactivate your remembrance.
So we are going through a period of great transition, and many of you might have been feeling this, or many of you might have not, but the point of this podcast is really to help you move through this transitionary phase and to get a better understanding as to what is really going on at this time and how best to navigate the waters of the storm that is brewing.
How best to navigate these times, because we're not in normal times, that we have shifted out of the so-called norm. And those who find themselves wanting to fit in the box of the past or fitting in the box of the norm are finding that their life is more stagnant or more difficult, or they feel that they are stuck in some ways. And this is because we are really being asked to step out of the box, to step out of the norm, to step out of what is deemed normal. There has been nothing really normal if we really look deeply into things. How is it normal that we don't feed the needy? How is it normal that children are going hungry? How is it normal that so many people are sick and that the health industry is actually a business and not there to assist in the way that they say they are? None of this is normal. And so we are here, those of you who resonate with who we are and what we are about, and this transitionary phase that we find ourselves in, we are here to break the norm and to start creating new ways of being, new ways of doing, new thought processes, new belief systems that are actually going to bring in an era of beauty, an era of peace, an era of healing.
And in addition to that, it's really to help you all start to look at things differently, because when we look at things the same way throughout our lives, and that when things have just been sort of we're on the wheel and we don't necessarily stop, we don't necessarily notice these things that are, as Kaya says, not normal. But because they have been normalized, we start to get a bit confused, saying, oh, well, that's just the way it is. So the intention of this podcast also is to help you guys start thinking a little bit differently, to start looking outside of the box, to start being the creators of our new reality. Because in reality, how many people are happy with the world that we are living in? How many people are fulfilled? How many people feel that they are living what could be deemed a successful life? And again, it's almost like we have to go and start redefining a lot of the words in the English language, because we all say words, but we're all defining them differently. So when we talk about success, most people will tend to think about monetary success, but for us, success is across the board, because how many people are financially successful, yet are they fulfilled? Are they happy? Are they healthy? Do they even have the time to spend their wealth? So the idea is really to start looking at how we can create a new normal, how we can create a new world and a new life, not only for ourselves as individuals, but for the collective at large. Because as we are going through this transition, this is a time that was spoken of in many of the ancient prophecies, and across many different civilizations this time was spoken of. And so the intention again of this podcast is really to start helping you, our tribe, you, our collective, to better understand why these times are so important.
Yes. Moving into an era of prosperity. Prosperity, we can liken that to success. And as Nicole has just mentioned, success is across the board. It's the mental success, emotional success, spiritual success, physical success, prosperity in also the material realm, because it is in the material realm that we find ourselves in, and it is through the action that we can actually change things. And we have noticed in our own process, in our own experience, and in our own healing journey that most of us, and I want to even use the word all, are disassociated, disconnected. So we think big things, we dream up big things, we envision big things, but there is a disconnect between that vision, between that aspiration of something better and the action that can get us to that place. There is an action which is missing. The action needs to be in alignment with what it means to be prosperous. So what is prosperity? Prosperity is physical well-being for sure, on all the levels, physical, mental, and emotional, and spiritual on a soul level, but it's also the ability to love, the ability to be loved, and the ability to bring out into the world the work that we are here to do. We call this the mission. Each of us is here on a mission. It all looks different, but we are all in alignment towards this better thing. In the New Age movement, they're calling it the New Age, the Golden Age. They're calling it the Golden Age. And so that is the direction that we're moving in. We are creating a new earth.
And in addition to that, because we are at a time of transition, and yes, there are, we really come from the premise that we are soul beings having a human experience. And it is unfortunate that the world that we live in today is that we have been so focalized on the material realm, completely forgetting that first and foremost we are spiritual beings. And it's interesting to see how there has been a lot of, it's almost like spirituality is becoming more mainstream than it was before. And now a lot more people who previously were completely unopen to these sort of more what some would term woo-woo, a lot more people are open because people are feeling the call of their soul. People are feeling that there's something missing. And there's something missing. We have been programmed to believe that this thing that is missing that we will gain access to it by buying more things or having more money or all of these things that are very much part of the matrix system in which we live. But the reality is that even those people who do have abundant wealth and are very materially comfortable, they too feel this void because they feel that something is missing. And that something that is missing is connection to their spirit, is connection to their soul.
Connection to their ancestors.
Connection to their ancestors, connection to who they really are. And it's interesting because, they say the story of Earth is the greatest story that was never told, because we have unfortunately been lied to about who we really are. And this is why so many people feel lost at this current time, because they don't know who they are. Our cultures have been wiped away. And for us who are recording this podcast here in Kenya, we can really speak for what the situation is here, and that even just across the African continent is that since colonial times, the culture of Africans has been completely eradicated. And we are moving more and more towards a Western civilization, and this is dangerous for us. And especially now as we are going through this time of transition, it is almost like we have to go backwards.
Yes, I call it moving into the ancient future. We've got to take elements of the past which were original to who we are, that were original to our organic blueprint, and bring them into a future that we actually want to create. And so to do that, we've got to start picking and pointing out and looking deeply within ourselves into our shadow, which is our hidden aspects. What is the programming which is not allowing us to be who we really are? What are the conditionings that have been placed within the self that are not allowing us to attain what it is that we came here to do, to really tap into our spirit, to really connect with our higher self, to really delve deeply into all of these misbeliefs and misconstrued thought forms and patterns and conditionings and programmings, which have until now been so deeply ingrained into us that there was no other way. That was simply the way it was, and there was no question about it. But now energies are changing, things are becoming lighter. Many people are starting to do the deep inner work, meaning as they do work within the self, they're also clearing the collective karma. They're also clearing the collective density, the collective shadows. And as we continue to do that, the energies become lighter and lighter so that we can see clearly. We can see more depth. We can see what it is that we are actually here to see without any sort of shadowed lens or faked up lens or foggy lens, so that we can embody the truth. So who are we, you may ask, now that we've gone through all of that? Who are we? Who are you? What is your I am presence? Who do you connect with in the space of meditation, in the space of silence? Just ask yourself that for a moment. Who am I? And we're not looking for a name. We're not looking for your age. We're not looking for the work that you do. We're looking for something much deeper. Who am I?
And these are the good times to be asking these questions, because essentially what we are seeing happening in the physical world around us is that, you know, everything happens in cycles, and there have been many great civilizations, many great empires that were risen and that fell. And right now, this civilization is falling. This civilization is crumbling. And this is why we are being asked to be the ones to decide what the new civilization that we are creating will look like. Because it is in every single action, every single thought, every single belief that we hold within ourselves that we are then pushed to create. Apologies, our dog is chasing the monkeys, and it's not much we can do about it. But yes, we are in the process of creating our new reality and the new civilization that is being birthed. So now is an important time to go inwards, because this is a great time of transition. But in that time of transition also is that in this time of transition is also that there is a merging of the physical and the spiritual realm. Up until this point, people seem to look at spirituality and the material to be two completely different things. But what we often forget is that it is in fact the spiritual realm that governs the material realm. So the only way to really change the things in this material world that we are no longer happy with and that we are no longer resonating with is to shift our spirituality, is to go inwards, is to ask these deeper questions. Who am I? Why am I here? And what is it that I want to experience in my life?
What is it that I came here to do? Because as soul beings here in a bodily form, we came here with a purpose. And so we must remember what that purpose is and bring that forward into the world. And that purpose can look simply like shining your light. Just being the best version of you is changing things outside in the material realm. Just being authentically who you are with no lies to the self. So standing in your firmness, standing in your confidence, standing in your self-esteem of who am I, then you become a sovereign being. In your sovereignty you choose. In your sovereignty you decide. In your sovereignty you're the one who starts to create the reality you want to live in. Otherwise we're creating by default. By default, using the same rules and the same systems and the same mechanisms that have been put in place for eons, which is really not doing anything beneficial for the collective. It is serving the few.
And you might have heard that we have moved into the age of Aquarius. And what does Aquarius represent? Aquarius represents the individual using their higher mind, their higher consciousness, in order to create things that benefit the collective. Because the world in which we have been living has been deeply individualistic, where everyone is doing everything for me, me, me. And then we all look around and we ask ourselves, how is it that we find ourselves in this situation that we are in today? Because we don't necessarily care so much about our brothers and sisters and all of those that surround us, and yet we are all interconnected deeply.
Absolutely, very much interconnected. And so I'd like to touch a little bit on shadow work now, which is something which we're very focused on, which I believe is the premise of the biggest change. It is, so what is shadow work? So we are made up of two parts. We're made up of our shadow, and we're made up of our truth, of our light, of who we really are, of our soul being, so to speak. And the shadow aspects are the parts of us which we don't want to see, which are hidden, which we tend to avoid, which we want to put under the carpet, which we feel ashamed about or guilty about or regretful about. And so what do? We put a damp cloth on it, and we put it deeply in the corner of our cupboard and don't look at it ever because it hurts to look at, or we believe it hurts to look at, or we are in fear of looking at it for whatever emotions are going to arise from that. The more we do that, the more we're operating out of shadow. And the more we're operating out of shadow, the more we are contributing to the old matrix and not contributing to a reality that we actually want to live. So the shadow work is very, very important so that you can step out of who you are not and come into who you are. It's about clearing all those belief systems and the programmings and the conditionings which have kept you stuck, which have kept you small, which have kept you in low self-esteem, in low self-worth, who doesn't look at yourself in a good way. You perceive yourself in a certain way which is not of the light. That is because of your shadow. You act in certain ways which you know deep down are not in your highest interest, are not in the highest good of the collective, because you're operating out of your shadow. And if you're not willing to look at your shadow, you are going to continually perpetrate, continually create for yourself the same reality that you actually don't want to live in. And so it is vitally important that we do the shadow work. And the shadow work isn't something that you do in a week or in a day or in a month. This is a continuous process. Nicole and I have been doing shadow work since the beginning of our healing journey. It's not something that we stop because there are layers to all of this. It's like the onion. We keep peeling the layers of the onion, and there's more layers and there's more layers. And this isn't something which, in the beginning, yes, it can feel a bit tiresome, it can feel a bit heavy, it can feel a bit burdensome, and the ego will fight for you not to do this, because it is the death of the ego, and the ego doesn't want to die. It feels like the death of the ego, and the ego is afraid of death. And so the ego is going to fight tooth and nail not to do the shadow work, not to delve deeply into yourself, not to set aside time for meditation, not to remove certain things from your diet that you shouldn't be eating for your highest timeline, all these kind of things. It's going to fight tooth and nail to do that. And our job is to continuously persist, gently persist, continue to reach deeper into ourselves with love and compassion and nurturing, instead of with brute force. It is through the feminine essence, through the feminine spirit, which has been closed off for a very, very long time, which has been set aside for a very, very long time. It is through this feminine essence that we can do the shadow work without much pain, without much suffering. And in that way, we bring the feminine back into play so that the masculine and the feminine can come back into balance. And it is all about balance. We are here to come back into balance. For the time being, we are out of balance. The world is out of balance. And you and I are here to bring back that balance by first bringing ourselves back into balance.
Yes, and in addition to that, as Kaya was saying, the shadow work is kind of all the proverbial shit that we push under the carpet, all the things that we don't want to look at. And really, as you go through this journey of shadow work, it is important to have a lot of compassion for yourself, because generally the parts of us that we don't want to look at are the parts of us that were created because we were wounded. And it is unfortunate that this world that we live in, it is a system that abuses people. The system does not elevate those who are kind-hearted and loving, but it seems to reward those who will step on each other and pull others down in order to get ahead. And that has pushed us to believe that the only way that we can be somebody or get somewhere means that somebody else cannot have, or somebody else needs to be pulled down. Yet we can all have and we can all thrive. But because of the trauma that we have all experienced, and this is where we have to differentiate between big T trauma and small t trauma. So we have big T trauma, which is related to blunt force trauma to the head, being in a horrific accident, going through some kind of major surgery, as opposed to small T trauma, which over time can become even worse than big T trauma. And this is being exposed to emotional abuse from a very young age, being exposed to physical abuse, being growing up in a broken home, growing up with alcoholic or addicted parents. And all of these things, we have to remember that most of us have experienced childhood trauma.
If not all of us, because even if we had a beautiful childhood and our parents were the perfect people, they passed on their trauma to us because this is generational stuff. And so we might not realize that we are holding trauma, and most of us don't even realize that we're holding trauma. Again, going back to this disassociation, and the disassociation was placed there for our own protection, and the ego placed that protective mechanism there. So it's the ego, we actually love the ego in that sense, you know? It's not about putting the ego down.
Or getting rid of it.
Exactly. It is about seeing the ego for what it is, and even thanking it for, until now, we are alive, we are living, it has protected us. And so we can look back and say, you know, thank you, ego. But there is a different level of ego. The ego can transcend that lower nature and move into a higher nature of self. And that is part of the process.
Yeah, so as Kaya was saying, you know, we have all experienced trauma, because if we look back through just the past 100 years of human history, how many wars have there been? How much conflict has there been? And the thing is, even now scientific research goes to show that past trauma is held within our cells
and DNA,
and within our DNA. So think back to your great-grandparents, or even just think back to your parents, your grandparents, your great-grandparents. Think about, especially those of us who live here on the African continent, think of the plight and the challenges that they experienced. And it is only now these current generations that have the ability to start healing that pain from all those years ago. And this is why so many people are in depression or in addiction, because these are coping mechanisms that were developed because we haven't been taught how to deal with our trauma. We haven't been taught how to deal with the emotions that stem from that trauma. And as a result of that, we're all repressing and suppressing, and that leads to all kinds of ailments, that leads to all kinds of mental health issues, it's leading to all kinds of cancers. And the reason why so many of us are sick in today's world is because there is so much trauma that is needing to be healed. And there is no shame in that. It is first, you know, part of the shadow work is honoring and seeing that you have experienced trauma. And it's not about getting stuck there and saying, oh, poor me, I've been traumatized, because in reality, we have all been traumatized. Yes, there are varying degrees of trauma that we have experienced, but it is time to look back, to honor that pain that you have experienced, to allow yourself to feel the emotions of that pain. Because when we repress and suppress, well, over time that leads to anger and resentment and shame and guilt and addiction, and nobody wants to feel this way. And this is how the shadow comes to be created, where we're operating from a place of pain
and fear
and fear.
And pain is pain. Allow yourself to feel the pain. It doesn't matter if you feel your cousin had it worse off than you, or the next door neighbor had it worse off than you, and who are you to complain? Pain is pain, and no one knows better than yourself how you're experiencing that pain. So honor your pain, honor your suffering, accept that you had pain, accept that you are going through suffering, and allow the tears to flow. Men and women. At this point, I'm speaking a lot to the men, because we have found that the men don't allow themselves to cry, don't allow themselves to feel, again, because of the conditioning, because of the programming. Men are supposed to be tough. Men cannot show their weakness. Men this, men that, men this. And so we've created a society where men have to suppress and repress themselves, and look at this imbalance which that has created. And so allow yourselves to feel the pain, allow yourselves to feel the suffering, honor it, and give yourselves compassion, give yourselves kindness, give yourselves nurturing. You might not even know how to do that for yourself at this time, and that is okay. Just keep telling yourself, I love you. We love, love, love a technique which was...
it's called the Ho'oponopono prayer, which comes from
Hawaiian doctor called Dr. Hula, and you can look it up. And it goes, I love you. Please forgive me. Thank you. I'm sorry. And you can repeat those 4 prayers in any way that you want, in any order that you want. You can triple it or quadruple it, or just go round and round like a mantra. This is so healing. It's so healing. In the beginning, you might not feel much, and that is totally. You do this for yourself, the more you start entering a space of love, a space of kindness, a space of nurturing for yourself. And start there if you do not know how to nurture yourself. And then the other thing that I wanted to mention, just following on Nicole's thought process, is the victim mentality. We don't want to get stuck in the victim mentality of poor me, poor me. That is shadow. That is operating out of shadow. The shadow wants to stay in the victim mentality, because on some level of being, we get attention from being the victim, and the shadow in that space enjoys the attention, because a lot of the time we were rejected or abandoned, or didn't feel like all of our needs were met as children. Again, all of this stems from our childhood. And so to be aware, not to be stuck in the victim mentality, you are aware of the pain and the suffering, but you don't want to get stuck there. Realize and remember and recognize that every single person that you see around you has been, if not today, has been through pain, has been through suffering. And just perceiving that and seeing that person from that lens already creates a connection from the heart space. And then we can start moving out of our judgmental mind, out of the small thinking of the mind, out of the enslaved mind, and into the heart space, which is what this journey is about. We're moving out of the head and into the heart. And I can't remember who said this, but the quote was something along the lines of, the longest journey is that from the head to the heart. And my goodness, is that so true? The mind always wants to jump back in, yes, but this, that, and the other, but this happened, and create a story around it, and create excuses around it, you know? And that's just mental stuff. The mind is actually there, here, for us to communicate, to visualize, to create something new, not to interfere with our well-being, not to interfere with what it is that we want to be doing in life, how we want to be feeling. It is the mind that interferes with that and brings us into a lower state of being, until we come into a space where we are the master of our minds. And when we become the master of our minds, now we get to choose our thoughts instead of being a victim to our thoughts. So there is that word again, the victim. You can be a victim to your thoughts. You can be a victim to your emotions. You can be a victim to the actions that you put out into the world. You can be a victim to circumstance. You can be a victim to food. You know, there's so many ways of being a victim. First, it's about being aware of it. Be aware of it. Where are you playing the victim? And from that point, start moving into a space where you are feeling empowered, where you can empower yourself. How do you do that? By changing your thoughts. When you change your thoughts, you change your emotions. When you change your thoughts and your emotions, you change the reality that you live in.
And just to add on to what Kaya was saying is that, you know, this journey of going from the mind or the head into the heart being a long one is because this is how we have been programmed. Everything around us since the youngest age has been telling us, oh, the only way to think, the only way to move through the world is from a place of mind. Especially that those people who do show emotion and express emotion, they are made to think that they are weak.
Or too sensitive.
And yet there is so much power in the emotions, because through our emotions it's information. We are all feeling emotions all the time, but you see, the problem is that when we are in our heads, we're not in our bodies. Because we feel our emotions through our bodies. We don't think an emotion, we feel. And when we have a thought, that thought generates an emotion. And that emotion is going to push us to take a certain action. And so this is why it is important to remember that there is power. They say even that the heart is more powerful than the brain, that it is the second brain as well as the gut. And so in a way, if we look back to the masculine and feminine principles, the mind can be seen as masculine, but the heart and the gut are feminine. And as we were talking at the beginning about this transition that we are moving through, we are moving out of masculine energies into more feminine energies, and that is moving more into intuition, moving more into emotion, moving more into beauty, moving more into feeling, moving more into art, moving more into creativity. And these are all aspects that have been deeply, deeply limited and negated in this current world in which we live, that we call the matrix system. And so it is about, as Kaya said, coming back into a place of balance, because, you know, it's important to differentiate between gender and energy. And especially now, as there is a lot being discussed about all this agenda stuff. And so this again is, you know, something that we will touch on in our future episodes. But within each and every one of us, because we are all made up of energy, E equals mc squared, where energy and matter are the same thing. It just depends at the speed of vibration at which they are moving. And so within every human being, whether you are man or woman, you have the masculine and feminine energies, principles. Just like masculine energy is logic, feminine energy is intuition. We have these principles and characteristics within each and every one of us. It is just that we have been overemphasizing the masculine characteristics. And so it is about coming back into a place of balance, comprehending that we have emotions for a reason, because they give us information. And think about it this way. Think about the actions that you take when you are in fear or in sadness or in depression, as opposed to the actions that you take when you are in joy and when you are in love. And because most of us are stuck in fear and anxiety and depression, think about the actions that the majority of human beings are making on a daily basis. Because if we were to do a census of all the 8 billion whatever people that we are in the world, how many people would say that they are truly, truly living in joy? How many people can you say are living a life that they don't need a holiday from? And this is part of the work that we do, coming back to everyone having a mission. Our mission is to help people to create a life in which they don't need a holiday, a life in which they can continue to feel joy and happiness, and to feel fulfilled, and to feel at peace, and to feel overjoyed at all moments of time for no apparent reason. And the way to get there is by healing these shadow aspects, is by honoring the trauma that you have experienced, is having compassion for yourself and those around you, because at the end of the day, we are all hurt people continuing to hurt people. Because unfortunately, we haven't been taught how to deal with our emotions. We haven't been taught how to deal with our pain. And we're told that the only way to deal with this is by over-medicating ourselves and running away and, you know, getting all these addictions where so many people are drinking and so many people are popping pills, because at the end of the day, it's a form of escapism. They don't know how to deal with this inner turmoil that is happening within them. And we know this all too well, because this is our own journey as well. We can only talk about this because this is the journey that we have been through, and we have been through a deep journey of healing. And the healing journey is not always easy. It is not always rainbows and fairies and butterflies. It can be dark.
And it can look ugly, and it can be painful, and it can bring about more suffering, but it's okay. It's called the dark night of the soul, and there is another side to the dark night of the soul. On the other side of that, we feel light. We feel like we breathe again. We'll go deeper into our personal story as we proceed with you over these podcasts. But Nicole mentioned joy, and I do feel like sharing a little bit of something. The first time I felt joy for the sake of feeling joy was 2 years ago. And when that hit me, it was like, oh my goodness, because you're programmed to smile, or we were programmed to smile from the earliest of age. Smile, girls. We'll go deeper into that story. And so we fake our joy, so to speak, or we're programmed to be thankful because someone gave us something, and so we're supposed to feel joy. Or because you were taken on a holiday, we're supposed to feel joy. That word, supposed. But is it coming from an authentic place? Is it coming from an innate place of joy? On my personal experience, it was not, until I did an emotions course with my teacher. And she blew the lid off shame. I was stuck in shame, and she blew the lid off shame deeply in my cellular level memory. And that was the first time I experienced joy for the sake of joy itself. And how deep was that for me to realize and to come into acceptance of.
Yes, this journey can be difficult, and we are here to help you on this journey, and this is why we felt very called to start this podcast at this time, because this is the work we do. We actually have a healing sanctuary, and this is our business. This is our mission, and so through the next coming episodes, we will continue to guide you. We will continue to give you advice. We will continue to give you information that will allow you to move through your own healing journey, because the healing journey is very personal. And yes, we can be here to help and to guide, but at the end of the day, you are your own healer. There is nothing outside of you that is going to heal you. It is your choice to start on that journey. It is the choices that you make that will allow you to heal your past pains and your past traumas.
We will give you as much information as we can and as much personal experience as we can, so that we can empower you to take this journey yourself. And I think we've come to the end of that, because we don't want this to be a very long thing. Today was more of an introduction. We may have jumped around a bit, but in this way you can kind of get an idea of where we're going with this. And we've touched on a lot of subjects which we're going to be going deeper into detail with. But today was really to introduce ourselves, to get to know you a bit more, and to open up the space, to allow you also to start questioning where you want to go, and to really go deeply into who am I.
And we are here to help. So if you have questions or want to reach out to us, or are looking for more direct support and guidance on your journey, then please reach out to us. You can email us on laviafia@gmail.com. So we hope that you have enjoyed this first episode, and we look forward to connecting with you more in future episodes to come.
Wishing a good day, a good morning, a good evening, wherever you are. Thank you very much.
And sending you much love. Bye for now.